Testing, testing. Mog, can you see my screen? Give me a hoorah. Yeah, great. And now can you see Bittensor? I'm assuming, yeah. Okay, cool. A hoorah. All right, well, let's let people file in here. 150, 149, 154, 154, 155. It's like, it's going up like Bittensor price 6 months ago. Reminder from Cat price action in the Bittensor Discord. I will be booted immediately. Yeah, sorry, everyone. 170. We got 170. We got set 171. Here we go. 173 coming, going 20K. Yeah. Well, I think we'll just have to start the event when the number starts going down. What it means, people are just getting bored of sitting here, listen to me auction off the seats. I will say that I very much wanted to do this in the classic TJFT channel, but I was advised not to because then there will be currently 185 people that would not be able to enter the room. So recording aside, there is some hierarchy here on the call where I'm up on the stage and you guys are down below, haha. But really, if you want to come on the stage at any point, just put your hand up, and I would prefer it if this call was community run from the beginning to the end. If you have a question, you want to say it, I'd love to hear your voice. I'd love if you jump on the stage and ask your questions directly to me. And then after the fact, we might even jump into the TJFT channel and go for more of a, well, highly interrupted conversation like we usually do. That being said, for the time being, it's going to be well controlled here with me up on the stage, and I'm going to take you guys through the announcement from start to finish. So yeah, let's go. I think the number 203, hey, if you're late at this point, you clearly don't care. So we're just going to jump. Yeah, see what 204, 203. We're good to go. We're good to go. Oh no, it's 205. We're going to go anyways. So great. So in this call, I want to talk about a couple things. 4 major points. So I want to tell you guys what our best understanding of the attack is so far and what has occurred over the last week, as well as in the preceding month. There's been a number of things happening behind the scenes that we want to talk about. Like, we've not just been sitting here twiddling our thumbs. We've been working very hard to deliver a strategy to mitigate any additional attack vectors and then open the chain back up in a safe and responsible way. And then we're going to talk about what all this means going forward and our vision for, getting back on our feet and turning this into a super win for Bittensor in the long term. But before I do that, I really want to acknowledge a number of groups that were essential to the shoring up of the chain and protecting every single one of us from an attack vector. So the first group was Manifold. Manifold Labs was the team that actually discovered the attack and informed Opentensor within 25 minutes of the first coins moving from wallets. Exceedingly fast. I mean, it showcases that these people have their nose to the grindstone, their ear to the track, and are paying attention and looking out for all of us. Second would be the Tau Stats team that immediately reached out to exchanges and had a large number of the funds locked. I'm not going to say how much of the initial funds were locked, but we're confident that at least 10,000 of the Tau, the roughly 27,000 Tau that was hacked, is recoverable. Maybe much more than that. But I don't want to speak out of turn here and promise anything before that's for sure. So anyways, I want to say just, big thank you to Mr. Mog. Now, Give me a moment, guys. Also, the actual source of the attack came from Ayer Van Tour's validator. That happened. Funny story. He discovered the attack while sipping coffee over breakfast. The following morning, within 24 hours, we had full knowledge of where the attack came from. It came from our developer community. It came from our validators. And then going forward, we had people like the Datura validator reaching out to the Secret Service, working with investigation teams and raising bounties to figure out where these funds have gone and who performed this attack. We have a myriad of people outside of those that I just named that have been essential, and I want to thank them specifically because they have played major roles here, but the list goes on and on and on and on and on. From the moderators to Opentensor itself, amazing work by the team there, to working tirelessly, honestly, for the last week. We've had engineers working at all hours of the day, 24/7, pushing changes to the protocol and ensuring that we as a community are totally safe when it comes to our funds, and that Subtensor and Substrate and Bittensor are 100% shored up. Anyways, also moderators have been in there. I've been seeing you guys down in the weeds full time. So that's the thank you. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty of what happened, or as what happened according to the knowledge that we have now. This is our best effort at giving you guys a timeline. But we reserve the right to change what we believe happened, because we're dealing with imperfect information, and we're just trying to get as much information out to the community as possible so they can help us in, tying down funds and finding the attack vectors that are potentially dangerous for us going down the line. Let's go through this. Can I just get a confirmation that everyone can see my screen here, and we're on the right slide where it says the attack, our understanding so far? Can I get a confirmation from everyone? Yeah, we can see. Okay, good, cool. Because I can't see what you guys are typing. So all of this starts on May 22nd, 2024. Opentensor was doing a chain upgrade to allow for people to reduce their take from 18% to 9%. And this was a substantial upgrade to Bittensor. And so this actually plays a major part in how this attack occurred, and why we were not able to detect it. And the reason for it is that we were doing a major migration of all of the chain staking accounts so that we could facilitate the change in delegated take percentage. Because of this migration on the chain, the upgrade took over 3 hours. And our process of performing a full upgrade of the Bittensor protocol, including Subtensor, means that we don't actually push to pip until the moment the chain upgrades. So at 6 p.m. UTC, we were performing the upgrade, but then we didn't upgrade the pip until sometime later. And it was between 6 and 9/22 that a malicious package was injected into PyPy. This would not have happened if we had upgraded both at the same time. And it's right here where I believe Opentensor needs to focus on more security. Obviously, and we'll be fielding questions about this and talking about our plans to make this impossible, but it's a very manual process to move both a chain upgrade with multiple keys, multiple individuals signing multiple packages simultaneously in an uncertain environment. But let's go through it. So at 6:06, we upgrade the chain. We begin the upgrade. At 7:14, the pipeline is injected. And at 9:22, the Subtensor chain migration is complete. And 9:27, Bittensor 6.12.2 is officially released on our GitHub. Now, that period of time when the PyPy package was available and being downloaded with repositories that had pinned that package, or if you were using pip to download Bittensor on your CLI, that was only 7 days. between the 22nd and the 29th. So we hope, but we don't know, that if a lot of people were affected in that period of time, perhaps that mitigated the total risk to everyone. And but we're not taking any chances, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So on May 29th, we upgrade PyPy to the newest version. That's 7.0.0. Now, between the 29th and the July 2nd, we are not 100% sure how many people were affected or for how long the attack lasted. Unfortunately, the endpoint that was receiving the funds, this mock Opentensor.io, which is not ours, of course, was pretending to obfuscate itself, was receiving, we don't know how long it was receiving keys. So potentially there are a number of compromised keys out there. And this is why when the attack occurred on July 2nd, we moved quickly to isolate and firewall the chain. We did not know the extent of what was occurring, and we may get a lot of criticism for the decision to take advantage of what you might describe as centralized, well, it certainly is centralized control over the number of chain nodes that we have. But we believed at that moment in time that this was the best decision that we could make in order to protect people, especially as we were seeing the number of compromised wallets that were moving at 7 p.m. UTC. So going through that day at 7 p.m. UTC, I received a message from Manifold about a number of moving funds. We detected that and confirmed it ourselves about 20 minutes later. And we went into a war room. 20 minutes after that period of time, we decided that it was the right decision to firewall the chain and put it into safe mode. Both of these things are unique. So the firewall is to stop the validators from being able to receive outside messages, and the safe mode was a very snap chain upgrade to Bittensor's protocol that would allow us to actually firewall at the chain level the ability to make a number of transactions. So that was at 7:41 p.m. UTC. So everyone is probably familiar with this particular date. It was quite an intense moment. Now, since July 2nd going forward, there's not much more on this timeline, actually. So I just want to fill in the gaps of what has been happening behind the scenes for Opentensor. So as I said before, we've been working nonstop. We've been performing a number of chain upgrades to the chain to facilitate what I will be showcasing at the end of these slides, a technical solution to this attack that we believe will help us allow people to safely recreate their keys and in the event of an attack, protect themselves. So since July 2nd until today, we've been hard at work doing numerous upgrades and pushing the technical changes into the chain that would facilitate the further slides, which I'm going to show you. But before we get there, I want to talk about how Opentensor itself is changing to mitigate this. And we were already in the process. I want to make this very clear. We were already in the process of changing many of the processes at Opentensor, so this would have not been possible going forward within, say, a month of where we were today. Opentensor has grown over the last 3 to 4 months from 10 employees to 40. Is going through an absolutely a remake of the organization to focus on security and process and ISO compliance across the board, so that we can be sure that we're not only just plugging the holes that allowed for this type of attack to occur, but going above and beyond to become one of the most secure software companies in the world. But I want to talk about what we have today. So as of today, meaning since this attack occurred, we've been working to change the very processes that would have potentially stopped this attack. So we've yanked the package. Of course, this is easy, but we've also performed a full code audit of both Bittensor and Subtensor, the same code audit that we performed to find this attack vector in the first place, and we feel fairly confident that we are not at risk of anything more. Also, we've integrated into the chain both cold and Hotkey functions onto the chain as native calls that people can make continuously. So this is coming out on Monday. Currently, the chain is firewalled, but by Monday, you'll be able to do cold and hot swaps on the chain, and we will be able to make this something that's just native and part of the ritual of the Bittensor ecosystem, so that this doesn't happen. Like, we can't have a long period of time when people are using the same keys. We want to make that not a requirement, but part of the culture of safety when it comes to Bittensor keys. We've already begun the process of following strict ISO compliance for PyPy packages, automatic key rotation, and CI-based abstraction, which potentially would have mitigated this attack. However, we're not totally sure. But certainly things like package checksum verification directly inside of our CI would have really helped this process. So, but that's just today. Going forward, taking Bittensor from being, I think, open to attack in some vectors to becoming a fully secure and going above and beyond what we can expect from a wallet in terms of security. Stage 2 is really just about pushing us to the limit of what is taking us to the state of the art in terms of mitigating risks. So obviously, Opentensor has talked about the release of child keys and how this will help us to centralize risk in the ecosystem. But we'll be doing some technical changes to the code base. And a lot of these ideas came from our developer community, from the Church of Rao, from open source contributors, but also from inside of Opentensor. There are a lot of like low-hanging fruit that will take us to become an incredibly secure package that can mitigate any other types of attacks, whether it's a brute force attack or password cracking or sub-package summation attacks or salt rainbow attacks on the wallet. None of these things occurred, but we want to make sure that we go to be best in class 5-star when it comes to security going forward. Now, above and beyond, really, we want to make BTCli Wallet multi-signature keys native and very easy to use for everybody. 2, the best way to secure your funds and keep them safe will be to do things with air-gap machines. We already had a proposal for this, but we're going to be pushing this really strong, really hard to allow for BTCli Wallet transfers or any other type of operation in Bittensor to pass over an air gap with QR code or file, which is based on really whoever decides to implement that. This would allow people to, for instance, sign a message, a transfer from an air-gap machine, create a QR code, scan that with the Bittensor iOS wallet, and at no point are your wallets exposed to the internet. We want to make this native to the way in which we build the BTCli wallet, and this is unique to I think only the most secure wallets in the ecosystem. So we want to be better than what's the standard here, and then also something that is on the roadmap here for the iOS wallet and the extension is just native 2-factor support, so that for users that are laymen that don't want to deal with air gaps and multi-signatures, that they can just use 2-factor support with things like the authenticator or their own email address, and have additional recovery processes in place for people that just want to hold Tau and stake it. And they don't want to do this difficult, more involved stuff. So these are all things that we have talked about in the past, but Opentensor is going to be pushing myopically in the next couple months to get out to our users so that this can never happen again. The wallets of Bittensor and Tau is the foundation of everything we build. So we're taking this very seriously. But let's talk about going forward. Most people are on this call because they want to know, how are we going to deal with opening up the chain? Before I get here, I want to reiterate why we closed the chain. We took centralized authority and we made a decision. And the reason we made this decision to close the chain and firewall it was because we believe that the most important thing is people's funds and Tau. That's the foundation of everything that we build in this ecosystem and as part of this community. We can talk about chain decentralization with proof of stake or proof of work. But at the end of the day, that decentralization is going to rest upon the decentralization of Tau holdings. It's going to be for people's Tau holdings and be for our commitment to maintain effectively property rights for people in this ecosystem. So it is the most important thing for us, and this is why we chose to take some liberties, you might say, in terms of decentralization, to firewall the chain and put it into safe mode while we had that opportunity. And I hope that the community understands and appreciates that we did that to protect your funds. But anyways, let's talk about how we're moving forward. Opening the chain back up. And this process is in many ways what we've been focusing on in the last couple of weeks, polishing this process, ensuring that it is tested, secure, resistant to attack, and adversarial. We're in a very difficult moment here because we don't know how many keys are potentially compromised. And it's very, very important to us that if there are more compromised wallets that are potentially lingering on the chain at this very moment, that when we open the chain up, that those keys don't immediately get drained by some attacking group. So this is the process for opening up the chain. And I want to be pay a lot of attention here. We would very much appreciate your help communicating and educating people about how we're going to perform this process. It's fairly simple, but let's go through it step by step. So on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to open the firewall and allow access to the chain. This means that people will be able to see the chain state. You'll be able to see your mining rewards. You'll be able to see the weights, everything will be exactly as it was when we closed the chain on July 2nd. And the reason for that, with some caveats, there may be some difference in the chain state from then and now, but the major point is that the same UIDs will be there. No registrations have occurred. The same subnets will be there. No subnet registrations have occurred. And no weights have been set. So the incentive distribution for all of the subnets should remain intact and be the same when you will be able to see that chain state on July 8th, 2 p.m. EST. Now, the second thing that we will enable on the chain on that date at that time is the ability to set weights on the subnets. Even though registrations will be still locked, this allows subnet validators to still distribute the emissions across the subnets as if they were running with a locked UID set. So no one can register, but still people can set weights and we can perform validation over the state of those miners. Third thing, we're going to enable a special function, which has been the product of the last week's development, called scheduled Coldkey swap function. So the way that this scheduled Coldkey swap function, now just very important, only these two functions will be available on the chain. Everything else will be in safe mode and you cannot transfer funds, stakes fund, unstake funds, create subnets, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason for the set weights is obviously to allow Bittensor to begin its normal process as soon as possible. And the scheduled Coldkey swap I'll explain in a moment. Between Monday and Thursday, July 11th, community members will be able to use the scheduled Coldkey swap to schedule moving their funds from an at-risk wallet to a new secure wallet. This is available to everyone. It was very important that we built a process that was not privileged. We didn't focus on any specific users. We built something that everyone could use to secure their funds at the same level, with the same mechanism on chain, without KYC, without Discord messages, without knowing Opentensor. We know that people are a little afraid of whether or not their keys are at risk. And so we built this function to allow them to swap their cold key, swap their keys, and everything associated with those cold keys directly through the chain without having the Opentensor. So what does the scheduled cold key swap actually do? Well, when I swap my cold key with another, all of the maps, all of the state of the Bittensor blockchain will swap in my new key and swap out my old key and replace it with my new key. So you keep all of your hotkeys, you keep all of your subnets, you keep all of your balance, you keep anything that is associated with your key on Bittensor. If you think that your funds are at risk, you want to call this function so that if in the event that the attacker is able to eventually use your funds, that if they were eventually to call a transfer, the cold key would be swapped and they would not be able to perform that action. So we want people, we know there's going to be a flurry of people sending this transaction. So, and don't worry, you have 4 days to send this transaction, and it doesn't matter if you send it at the very beginning of the process or the very end of the process. And really, if you don't think that you're at risk, we recommend not sending it. Like, for instance, if you use the extension or Polka.js, or you staked with Taustats or Nova Wallet, or you didn't download Bittensor 6.12.2, and if you never actually called any transactions from that particular version of Bittensor, we're very, very confident that you're not at risk of losing funds. But let's talk about how this process proceeds from Monday until Thursday. When Thursday... So the scheduled transaction does not actually perform the swap. It schedules it for 72 hours later when the actual swap occurs on the chain. And I'll explain why we did this in a moment. So on Thursday, the first scheduled swaps would begin to execute on the chain. So scheduled swaps are executed on the chain on Thursday. The first one would be sometime around 2 p.m. And Thursday will also be the date that we bring the chain back to normal operation. So after Thursday, everything is the same on Bittensor. You can set weights, you can register subnets, you can register UIDs, you can burn register, you can stake, you can unstake, you can delegate. Everything is there. Now, there is a situation that can arise, which we might describe as a race condition between you and an attacker during Monday and Thursday. And this is the complexity here that we needed to deal with. If both you and the attacker has the key, there's a chance that, for instance, if we had opened the chain just directly on Monday, July 8th, they would get the transaction in before you, and Bob's your uncle. There you go. You've lost your funds. So we have this window of time where it doesn't matter if you send it it doesn't matter when you send this transaction to swap your key between Monday and Thursday. If both you and the attacker were to perform the same operation, that means if your keys were actually compromised and the attacker were to choose to perform this swap operation like you during that 4-day period, what we will do is take your key and lock it and turn it into what we would describe, what we're naming an arbitrated state on the chain. So just make people understand this very specifically. This would only occur if you and the attacker attempted to swap your keys within the 4-day period. Most people, and we really highly suspect that a large number of people that call this function will not enter this arbitrated state. However, we will provide mechanisms for you to see if that's the case, who's arbitrating your key in terms of their key SS58 address, and whether or not everything is performed the swap after Thursday. But in the unlikely case that this occurs, because it potentially can, given that 2 users have this key, we take your key and we will turn it into what we are calling an arbitrated state. Now, this is difficult to solve on chain because blockchains don't have a sense of what a person is or who they are or whether or not they're good or bad or a member of the community or a contributor or a validator or anything like this. They just know whether or not you have the password. And so there is no difference between you and an attacker from the perspective of the chain come Thursday, July 11th at 2 p.m. We had previously attempted to solve this process by KYCing individuals that fall into this arbitration period ourselves as Opentensor through a Discord bot. We built out some highly sophisticated, I suppose, mechanisms for us to transfer extrinsics across Discord bots and do KYC deduplications, but I won't go there. I want to talk about how we think the best way for us to solve this is, and it's actually to lean into Bittensor's decentralization and use on-chain mechanisms as the solution here. We took a moment to become more centralized in order to solve this problem, but we're leaning into decentralization right here, right now. So in the event that your key becomes arbitrated, and in the unlikely event that your key becomes arbitrated, we will lock your funds until there is an on-chain vote of which voters come from the Senate to unlock towards one of the keys that has been submitted. So in the event that the user and the attacker submit different destination addresses, we're using a proof of work mechanism for Sybil resistance, but I can talk about that complexity later. The funds will be locked until the proposal goes through the Senate. Now, every key that falls into the state will have an open proposal, and we will have to tediously, excruciatingly, but we will do it, go through every single potential key and make sure that it goes through to the users that we can determine as a community actually own the keys. We suspect that the attacker will not choose this direction because obviously it would require doxing themselves in a very serious way when there are ongoing criminal Secret Service level and FBI level investigations into the specific users, as well as multiple private investigating agencies and hacker finders looking for them. So we suspect that they probably won't be attempting to go through this process. But if they do, maybe we recommend they should so we can find them faster. So this is how we're going to deal with those processes on chain. So we will be following this very closely after Thursday. So now I will be answering questions about this process. It's technical, detailed after the call for people that want to come up on the stage, and also there will also be instructions for how to run this function. Tomorrow, you will have documentation for how to run this function by 2 p.m. On Monday. So rest assured, it'll be very easy for people to just use the CLI and create a new wallet and perform this swap, and then watch after 4 days for their funds to properly be swapped to the right keys. Okay, now, going forward, this is just one slide. The halving is coming in 2025. And Bittensor has gone through an incredible amount of innovation over the last 3 years. We've changed the protocol numerous times. And every time we do, I think that we get closer to something that is more performant. It was this time last year, in July 2023, that we had a similar fiasco on the Bittensor network. And it was because of that fiasco that things drastically changed for the way in which Bittensor worked. It was because of what some would call the cabal takeover of Subnet 1 on Bittensor, with the majority of the emissions. We dropped the emissions for 2 weeks. We had no emissions on Bittensor during a period of time that we worked very hard and we turned the subnet creation process into something that was fully decentralized, non-permissioned, and is what we released 3 months later with Revolution. I think this event will be of similar, if not more, magnitude for Bittensor in terms of security, but also in terms of aligning ourselves towards where we want to go. 2025, first halving of Bittensor. By the end of it, our plan is to fully decentralize the chain nodes so that it's impossible for us to perform anything like a firewall going forward. We will be giving up the control of the Bittensor Python package, hopefully to more and more of a decentralized open source process. It is open source, asterisk here. It is already open source, but we want to absolutely stimulate more contributions from outside contributors to help us perform as well as we can in terms of building the best Python package and wallet. And we want to open up for good Opentensor to control, Opentensor's control over Subtensor to on-chain governance. Through this Senate, through subnet owners and contributors across the stack. That's our commitment. And this period of time has been obviously very intense for a number of people. We're very sorry for any part that we played in it and any miscommunications we've had. We're very thankful for everybody that has contributed to help this really be mitigated in a massive way. And going forward, we would very much appreciate and be very thankful for everybody that turns this into a major success for Bittensor in the coming year. So anyways, guys, thank you for listening. And now I want to just have people come up on stage. I want to answer questions. I want to do my best at making sure everything is absolutely understood so that when Monday comes at 2 p.m., everybody can move their keys properly. So let's go back. Great. Raise your hands. Oh, wow, there's 300 people here. I guess I started too soon. Guys, okay, well, you can answer. Perhaps someone can help me. Yeah, Easy Trades on. Come on up. We got Mug Machine. Come on up. We got Ref. Con up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi. Yep. I came in a little late. I just wanted a maybe like a 1-minute explanation as to the cause of what made possible this hack. How did the package get inserted into the file on GitHub?
Yeah. So I mentioned a bit in the call that we have a very unique process for upgrading our packages on the chain and in Python. And the uniqueness comes from the fact that we have to have the package in line with the chain state at the same time. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for you to install the package, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, it's a fairly manual process in order for us to update the PyPy package. And this was the attack vector. The time between the time, oh my God, that's funny. The time between when the chain upgrade occurred and when we pushed our own package, that was the attack window. And we also believe now that there are probably a number of ISO compliances that we need to really focus on here in terms of how we can stop, like for instance, key control. Like we should probably not have any individuals that have keys to upload the PyPy package, which was what happened at that particular time. We don't know who uploaded it. Was it an attacking group? Was it someone else? We don't know. So they must have hacked the keys or got access to the keys in some other way, and then used that to push the malicious package.
If I can jump in with a little question about live registered neurons, so hot and cold keys that are registered as either subnets, validators, or miners. Will the scheduled hotkey or cold key swap, how will it affect them when the chain is brought back up?
Yeah, great question, Mark. So the everything on Bittensor is effectively permissioned by the cold key. So if we can get the cold keys back into the hands of the right individuals, and by that I mean the users likely on this call, with the exception of the hackers that might also be on this call, if we can get the cold keys back into people's hands, then they can perform all sorts of hotkey swaps as far as they want. Now, the actual cold key swap itself swaps the hotkeys associated with that cold key. So if you have, for instance, a validator in your case, when you do a cold key swap, your validator hotkey will remain the same, but now associated with a different cold key. Then after the fact, after Thursday, it's fully up to you whether or not you want to actually swap the hotkey associated with that cold key, and you'll have full permissions. You can take your time.
But for a registered miner, if they were to swap a hotkey, can you do it to a live neuron, to a registered neuron, or would it?
Yeah, you can. You can, and the only issue here is that there'll be a period between when you swap. It's a period after you swapped, and when the validators sync their metagraphs with the new chain state, which would be like a couple hundred blocks, not very long, that you would not be recognized. So that's about it.
Okay, one other thing, which is, can someone make sure that they're on hand to update the delegates JSON file, which powers a lot of things at the moment and will suddenly become out of date?
Yes, we're on that. Great.
Hello, can you hear me? So I want to ask one question about the attack that when our key bytecode of the key is uploaded, is it a bytecode for the Coldkey, or they upload the hotkey mnemonic also?
Yes. So it's very likely that both the hot and the cold keys were exfiltrated during this attack for some users. That means you do need to perform a cold key swap. You need to swap your key, both your cold and eventually your hotkey.
But if they had our hotkeys, the phrases, and so when we swap our code key to another code key, and the hotkeys is attached to the new code keys, right? And is the hotkey safe? Because
Yeah. So the hotkey could still be compromised. And it's for that reason that we recommend that people actually swap the hotkey itself after Thursday as well. So, and that will be totally possible. But it will be possible by the fact that you have swapped your cold key, and now that is safe. The most important thing to focus on is obviously to protect your cold key, because it's what gives you permission to swap your hotkey.
Funds are safe with the cold key swap, but with if you don't do a hotkey swap, as a validator, of course, someone could use your hotkey for access to the network, because that's what gates it. And as a miner, they could essentially register a neuron with your hotkey and badly mine on your behalf, and therefore mess with your statistics of mining or validating.
Yes, I don't think they can register, but they can mess up your current miner. In order to register, you have to pay.
Already, then they can't, but they could register you on. I mean, I'm not sure they're going to, because that's obviously a cost incurring thing. But just what could be possible.
Okay, is the hotkey swap still going to cost 1 tau, or has this price been?
Wait, we're going to reduce. Yeah, we are going to reduce the price. Yeah. Yeah,
So
we haven't picked a specific value, but it will be sub 1 tau for sure. Likely, maybe Formalized Tensor can actually type in what our specific value is there. I don't know, but it's going to be, if you're asking what it exactly is, I don't know right now. It will be certainly reduced.
Will the cold key swapping function stay with us for a long time, or is this like a temporary thing that's you're going to remove in a week or so?
Yeah, so technically there are two swapping cold key functions. There's swap cold key, and then there's scheduled swap key. And you could call a scheduled swap key later in your life if you want to just do everything 4 days slower than, 72 hours slower than you'd like to do them. But after the 72 hours have progressed since Monday, on Thursday at 2 p.m., the normal cold key swap operation will open up and can be just called instantaneously on the chain. So yeah, no, it will be a function. I mean, this was one of the slides in the deck talking about how we pushed a lot of these technical changes over the last 7 days so that we would be in a much secure state just across the board, like just in Bittensor in general, minus the attack, like allowing for cold key swaps, allowing for hotkey swaps, allowing for child hotkeys as just native aspects of the chain. So yes, the answer is yes, for sure.
Okay. About the attack. Before the attack, when was the last time where the API key to Pipi has been rotated?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Has it been rotated on the regular schedule, or set up once and just stay like that?
It would have been rotated on a period that would have been a better question for our head of security at that time. Yeah, Ella, you can answer.
I was a little bit closer to this. I was in. We had somebody just leave. What is it, about January-ish or February-ish? And I believe that was around the time we rotated everything that we had. So Q1.
Okay. So after the last person has left the team, you have rotated the keys, and then we don't know what happened.
That is the estimate. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hey guys. Hey Cons, thanks for having me on stage. I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to the audit. So I know there was an OTF audit. Was there an external audit, and what will be the audit schedule going forward?
Yeah, so we did an audit with Trail of Bits last year. And they didn't poke holes in this particular aspect of where the attack vector was, which tells you a little bit about audits.
Can I comment on this as well? Just because I was running with them on that audit. So they audited the subtensor code, they audited the bittensor code, and they audited basically our operations end to end. Constance, right, they did not really raise any flags on the way we were doing things. They did raise some flags on the bittensor code, which has been resolved since then. And at this point, we're probably looking at running a more recent audit as well with, we're not entirely sure which company yet, but it's something we're looking into at the present.
I will also mention here that last year, Opentensor was much smaller than what it is today, and we have really the firepower to perform these types of audits internally. We have hired people specifically to get us to ISO compliance, and that process was actually underway when this attack happened.
Okay. It's all good to hear. Would you guys be interested in opening any form of community audit program or pursuing a community audit?
Yes, absolutely. And because like we absolutely want to get help from our community. We know there's just absolute geniuses out there. So for sure, bounties, white hat bounties. I will personally be funding core Opentensor. The Bittensor core developers at Church of Rao. I will be funding them through a validator program that's in the works. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, BT Guy, about how we should set that up, and we will take lessons from anyone.
Yeah, I definitely do have some suggestions. I don't think the open forum is the best place to voice them. But what I can say is the community is some of the most intelligent people that I've met to date. And I think it would do the network justice to let some of them take a look at the code.
Right.
That's it for me.
Hey,
Thank you
guys.
so much for answering my questions.
Thank you, BT Guy.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, SX.
Yeah. So in most of the cases, when things like this happens, is like someone from the team. I think in 70 or 80% of the cases, is someone from the team, someone that opens the access or stuff like that. So I'm like suggesting to like have a look inside the team and like to check on the former members of Bittensor, because there might be something there that they have done in the past, or yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
It feels-
suggestion, Essek. We there is an ongoing investigation, and we don't want to point fingers until there's more information. But we're working with authorities to follow through with this process in the right way, and so we're keeping our cards close to our chest, and we're not saying things out of line. But thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, what will happen with the blocked DAO? How much time it will actually be blocked until the voting will be available?
Great question. So let me talk a little bit about how this happens technically. So if the attacker decides to sign this transaction, which becomes in conflict with your own swap during the 72 hours that this particular transaction is the only available on the chain, if that race condition occurs, we create a unique proposal for that specific cold key, and being yours, for instance. And then that proposal is in continuous availability, you could say, like it's open on the chain and will be viewable by everyone for us to arbitrate just one by one. So now the actual endpoint for that arbitration is not something that we can peg. It depends on the speed at which that us as a community can arbitrate every single one of them, which I really very much hope we do have that kind of community coordination amongst the Senate in order to do every single one of these items. Now, yeah, so I think that I can't answer the question. It really comes down to, in some sense, I could give it back to you because you are in the top 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Jake, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, David.
Hey, thank you guys. Really appreciate all of this info and transparency. And I know you guys have been working around the clock. Very much appreciated from the community. One question I had was just, will there be a tool to see if a wallet address has a scheduled cold key transfer? so people can see if there's been a claim on their address?
Yes, exactly. There will be tools for that.
Okay. And one thing to just sort of point out as a potential, issue there, just once the scheduled time elapses, it's possible you could think your cold key is safe, kind of wait that elapsed period, and the hacker could potentially do a cold swap after, because there'll still be that functionality, correct?
So after the 72 hours, if you have called the swap and the 72 hours elapses, they have no more control because you've swapped the key, right?
Yeah, no, correct. I'm just saying, like, even if you think there's a very small percent chance, it's probably best to call it during that period so there's not a potential cold swap or something afterwards.
Yeah, right. So if you think that there's a chance that your key is compromised, probably a good idea to call it in that 72-hour window, because if it were the fact that it is compromised after that 72-hour window, they can just move your funds, right? So, and we can't do anything about that.
Yep. All right, thanks.
User on the chat says that we should prevent new cold keys from calling it. So if a cold key was created after today, it should not be able to do the swap, the scheduled swap. Otherwise, the attacker could create 1 million of those and try to do contested swaps. And also, one more thing, don't swap your key twice, because you will land yourself in the arbitration.
We have some protections against this, Ref. So those are great comments. But to your first point, I've thought about that. I'll have to reconsider it. One problem would be, of course, if somebody only has one wallet, where do they send their funds? Perhaps they would look for outside support from within the community. That's a good idea. So I will revisit that. The second thing is about the creation of wallets spuriously. So the actual function call to swap the wallet will not cost tau. It will require a proof of work, which is native to Bittensor. And so, and the more that you submit for a particular cold key increases exponentially the cost to submit new cold keys. This is both Sybil protection, but also it stops the attacker from like filling up the chain with all of their keys. They would have to perform an exponentially large number of proof of works in order to do that, whereas individuals can just do that on their own for their own keys. And what was the third thing, Ref, that you mentioned?
Yeah, so if you have a cold key and you want to swap it out, don't do it twice.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry, and we just check that on chain. So if you set to the same key, we just don't allow that to happen. So don't call it twice on yourself with different keys. Yes, thank you, Ref. Very good point. Yeah, do not swap your keys twice with different destination addresses, or you're in a world of hell.
Hey, I've got a
do not
question
hack yourself. Go on, Zion.
So my understanding is if this cold key swap works as intended, then any compromised wallets will sort of be under the control of the right person going forward. And so there's no further risk of a loss of funds. But for the people who have lost funds, is there any sort of way to reverse that, either like technically or manually, or sort of what's the intention around making people whole if they've lost funds in the hack?
It's a great question, Zion. Our current priority is focusing on making sure that more people are not at risk. Bittensor and the chain is not at risk. We will talk about that in a later call. We haven't fully come up with a plan, and we hope that for those that were affected, that we can talk about this at a later date. So let's just pin that particular question for time being. Is that all right, Zion?
Understood. Yeah. Best of luck with everything.
William.
Hello. This is going to be a busy stage, guys. I had one question that I know you guys have got covered, that is just any issues with sequencing between cold key swap and scheduled cold key swap. There'd be a slight irony if a load of people triggered scheduled cold key swap, then got superseded by cold key swap. And I guess my other question is, like, what's the record for least hours slept in the week in the foundation?
It's every week. It's always formalized tensor who just doesn't sleep. So yeah, that just goes back in for a number of months. For the second, the first question, Fox, you can't call the cold key swap until Thursday at 2 p.m. So only it's scheduled. Was that your question?
It was more if the scheduled, because the scheduled swap has a fixed time interval, or it just triggers exactly on Thursday.
It has a fixed interval. So this is important, right? So yeah, thank you for bringing that detail here, Fox. It's 72 hours after the fact, right? And so if your key has called that within the first 72 hours, you can't then call cold key swap while that one is waiting, if that makes sense. So yeah, we did the accounting.
Well, that was exactly the point. And again, it's a stupid question, but it's nice to know you've covered it.
Yeah, I'm glad. There you go. Community support audit, a community audit.
There you go.
Okay, so I have one thing. Currently, if funds are moved between wallets, you can go on Tau Stats, you can see what's going on. You can see it on Polkadot. There's a number of tools for that. If the money is stolen along with a hotkey, so someone does not transfer money out of the, cold key, does not transfer money out of a cold key to another cold key, but takes the entire cold key and then swaps it several times in a row, then I don't think as a community we have tools to keep track of it. So if this is a vector of, like, someone will try to use it, then we will be blind. So I would suggest to maybe this new function for swapping cold keys without a 3-day delay. Maybe let's not turn it on in 3 days, but first build the tools that will allow us to track what's going on. We've lived without this instant cold key swapping for a very long time. I think we can stay without it for a couple of weeks more. It will be fine.
Great. We'll talk with you offline, perhaps, Ref.
Okay.
Obviously, our goal is to move as quickly as possible here and get the chain going. So we'll see what we can pack in terms of technical changes by Monday. But yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Saruk, do you have any questions for me here on the chain on the stage?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's one question, but it might have two parts to it. But first, I just want to say thanks for all the hard work and all the hours you guys have been putting in. The question is the arbitration process. Let's say the attacker wants to make it difficult to tell which accounts are really in arbitration, or flood the process with additional requests by using accounts that are just recently created. Are you guys going to be going off of like a timestamp or a certain block? Basically, like at the end of this block, anything after that won't be going into arbitration. And then if it isn't a fixed time or a fixed block or height, and people are, between Tuesday and Thursday are firing that delayed function, there is going to be a window of time that you can't just pick a date and look at everything after that. Right.
Yeah. I think I understand your question.
Everything before. Okay.
So from Monday until Thursday, let's say that the attacker has your keys. If for everyone else, it's easy. The key gets swapped, right? So no problem. Let's suppose that the attacker has your keys, Saruk. So you call the swap, and then he calls the swap, or she calls the swap, or they call the swap, or it, whatever. Swap says, hey, no, actually, this is the destination key over here. That just the fact that a second key has been registered in that period means that the key now goes into arbitration. So now it's in this new state. The cold key that in question is in a new state. So you're following me up to this point, right, Suruk?
Right. Yeah, I follow that so far. But my question was like,
no, I understand your questions about
if they,
going forward.
Okay.
Going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I just setting the stage. So at this point, we create basically a proposal for the key, and that proposal is now immediately up for vote amongst the Senate. And if a quorum is reached on which of the two keys is the one that we as a community can decide is the legitimate key, that's the one that goes through. Now, obviously, what if the attacker is put both his keys in, right? So it's only the only two keys available for vote are his. Well, this is why we actually have to allow individuals to continue to set new keys in the period going forward. Now, every key, and this just depends on the chain, effectively. So the set of potential keys to select from over time can grow. But the difficulty in terms of proof of work to register a new key associated with another cold key increases exponentially, so that for an attacker to do this process in a massive way across multiple keys, they would have to fight effectively proof of work to steal every single proof of work in that period. So the good guy just needs to win one, right? The attacker needs to win every single one, growing exponentially. And then let's say that they give up and the user finally gets his key in there after a long time of fighting this proof of work battle between him and the attacker. His key is now in the set. Let's say it's 100 keys. He can come in here and be like, look, I am legitimate. Here is my key. Use this key and I can sign this key and I have a signature for this key. Please vote on this one as the correct one to distribute funds to. So assuming that there is some way for us as a community to determine between these types of the attacker and the legitimate individuals, that process can come in play at that moment. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does. I was also concerned about the volume of proposals that will be created that the Senate must review. Like, how do we keep that to do we use the age of the account? Because basically anything before this attack should be what's in arbitration, nothing new after Thursday.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. We have that stuff in check, right? So you can't ask for an arbitration or a swap on a key that doesn't have funds or hotkeys, right? It doesn't make sense if it has less than some amount of balance. The actual initial swap cold key requires a fairly large proof of work that makes it difficult to just DOS the chain. And that amount is growing continuously. So we've thought about all of this stuff over the last couple of days, and that's why honestly we've been sort of radio silence for the last. And we said we would have an announcement, and then we pushed it and so forth because we were trying to focus on those things. But these are really good questions. Thank you, Suruk.
Yeah, absolutely, and these are good tools to have. I'm a part of a couple of other blockchain projects, and this is actually a really good solution, even when there's things that aren't currently looking like this. Yeah. So
I want to say something here before Fox jumps in about how we feel about this process is in order for this to work properly in the event of an attack occurring in the next week or so, it is simply going to stimulate Bittensor's on-chain governance in a massively positive way. So the outcome can only be positive here for us. It's like, okay, nothing happens, everyone gets their keys back to whatever. Other option is, boom, we have a fast-moving, highly functioning, tight-knit community on-chain governance, maybe one of the best in the world because of the scale of the number of keys that are in arbitration, right? Many votes all the time, us pushing this aspect of the project to push a really well-functioning, fast-moving, decentralized governance system. So it's only up in my mind.
So, Jake, I had one other question, which was specifically related to contested subnet keys. Now, obviously, subnets require a lot of gentle love and tuning through the use of the key throughout the day, often multiple times in a day. Have you thought of treatments for subnet keys that are under arbitration, and any way that we can make sure the production of the commodities that Bittensor relies upon is as undisturbed as possible? And that could range from, a default pause on registrations to anything, but just curious if that's something you've wargamed.
Yeah, I mean, when these proposals open up, let's say, for instance, God forbid, that the arbitration period happens for Mog Machine here for Tau Stats. He can't withdraw funds, but he can set weights. He's kind of shit out of luck for getting funds off of his key until the vote goes through. But we're talking about somebody that is, number one, a member of the Senate, right? That has deep community engagement and connections within the system. And I imagine that when it comes to super important keys, that we can swap them through on-chain governments it's very quickly. So
He's
not
a sketchy guy, Jake. He's a sketchy guy.
I think he's a sexy guy.
I was going to say, you just basically said I can come and win all arbitration because you will trust me.
That's the answer I assumed. It's obviously a concern of what happens if multiple subnets get stuck into this state for too long. But generally, the teams running them are pretty public.
Although no one wants to make an assumptions and have every base covered, I think there's a very small chance that at this stage, an attacker who has performed the actions that have been performed is likely to pop his head up just to have another bit of fuckery at the risk of exposing themselves further. I don't want to say any more on that, but if you think deeply about this, it probably wouldn't be the wisest choice.
Yeah, exactly. So guys, I am going to pin the call here. I'm going to keep it just over an hour because we'll be having a call 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, where we will go through this technically, show people on a demo on the screen, and we can continue that conversation on into the wee hours of the night if people have questions or problems with installing or going through the documentation. So just stop it here. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. It's been a great call. Let's fucking go. Let's get out there. Let's do this. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much, Mog, Fox, MX, Dave Fields, Ref, Saruk, Essek for getting on the stage. I love you guys. Okay. Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye.